Welcome everyone to our final session in the very first UQ ChangeMakers Global Alumni Volunteer Symposium. On behalf of UQ, I'd like to say in my own Wiradjuri language, Marin Yaria, Injumaradul, Lianjingul, Mangul. Good evening. I pay my respects to the traditional owners and caretakers of country here in Meanjin, Brisbane, where I'm speaking to you from tonight. My name is Dr. Anita Heiss AM, and I'm an author and a professor of communications within the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies Unit here at the University of Queensland. I've also been your host for the symposium. We're joined this evening by UQ's Pro Vice Chancellor, Advancement and Community Engagement, Jennifer Coulson, and Chief Community Engagement Officer, Michaeli Costello. We're also joined by a talented set of panellists: humanitarian and aid worker and nurse Andrew Cameron, OAM, social entrepreneur and youth activist Makara Ramsing, and thought leader and mentor Lawrence Au. As we reflect on the past 3 days, I'd like to hear from you, our audience members. What was your key takeaway from the symposium? Did you learn something new? Did you meet someone interesting? Let us know in the chat box. We've had a really diverse program of activities, from personal development sessions to our first alumni-led global cafe, where we came together with our global connections leaders on new ideas for how we can better connect as alumni. The final session will kick off with brief addresses from both Jennifer and Michaeli, followed by, of course, our panel discussion with some of our talented alumni on the topic building leadership through volunteering. I'm going to hand over now to Jennifer to get us started.
Thank you so much, Anita, and hello, everyone. It's so fantastic to see so many faces that I have, some who I haven't seen for quite some time. KY, it's been a long time. I'm sorry I missed you when you were here in Brisbane recently. But I might take a slightly informal approach, since we've got a smaller group here who know us really well. But for those who I haven't yet had the chance to meet, but your names are awfully familiar to me from our great team, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Jen Carlson, as Anita kindly said. And can I begin first by acknowledging the traditional owners and their custodianship on the lands that we're here in St. Lucia tonight, and pay respects to ancestors, to their ancestors and descendants. And can I also say, just in case you haven't heard, a big congratulations to Anita on many items these days, from plays to books. She's doing it all, and we're really lucky to have her as a partner on the ChangeMakers journey. So thanks, Anita, and congrats. So I really hope, as the sun literally sets here in Brisbane, that the sun setting on this alumni symposium has been a really positive and constructive use of your time, and certainly the team's time. It's been phenomenal to hold this event right on the back of launching the big new ChangeMakers platform, which I'm sure you're all very well aware of, because I think we've been talking about it quite a bit. But I just want to really assure you this was a big undertaking, and I really want to acknowledge many of the colleagues that are on this call who really helped bring this to life. And we've got a few things to learn, and we want to improve on that, and I'll come to that in a minute. But really fundamentally, what I want to reassure you is that this platform is really made for our alumni. And it was really made by our alumni through really great advice from some of you on this call. In fact, many of you on this call. So I want to thank you for getting us to this point. This is very much your tool to share with others. And I hope you can spread that word around, and we can continue to grow the membership on this platform and keep us all connected in your own way, in the way that suits for you. So speaking of trying to keep it a little bit informal, I thought, instead of asking for feedback now, you all know our team pretty darn well at this point and how to get a hold of us. But we've been getting a lot of feedback on the platform, on the content of events, on the ChangeMakers program more broadly, et cetera. We really want to hear those ideas, and we really need you guys to be those voices on the ground. So I really just want to encourage you and thank you for continuing to provide that feedback, things that you think we can be doing better, things that you think are going really well, etc. So the team's really open to those things, and I'm open to those things too. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Now, you've heard the word ChangeMakers a lot, but I'm going to use another term that you're probably going to hear a whole lot about if you haven't already, and that's a little bit of a brief insider perspective on a really exciting project that I'm very passionate about. So can I just ask kind of with a really quick show of hands, how many of you guys have heard about the Queensland Commitment? A couple of you. All right. So I'm going to give you, Lauren, I'm glad you have Lauren, because you I'd be in trouble if I wasn't, if you didn't. So I'm going to keep it really brief, which is really hard for me. Some of our ChangeMakers board members know from this morning. I get very passionate about this topic, but basically under the leadership of our still fairly new Vice Chancellor, Debbie, who helped kick off the start of this session, she's had an extraordinary commitment to making sure that we're remaining core to our remaining honest and present in our core principles of why we were established as a university. And as Michelle and I kind of briefly chatted about, and we'll pick it up on Sunday, Michelle, ensuring that we have a very clear social license to operate. So what is the value proposition of the university? I mean, obviously we educate incredible students who become incredible alumni. We research through extraordinary undertaking that is in every corner of this campus that's truly changing lives or preserving history in ways that is essential. And then the piece we don't often talk about is the requirement that goes back to society, that goes back to our community. That's why we exist. We're not for profit. We exist to support the communities in which we're living and the communities beyond those walls. Because of course, all of you in your many ways are ambassadors, and well, you are our ambassadors around the globe who are creating change in your own ways, not to overuse that. But anyhow, so what we're really coming down to is some of our core principles. So we've been talking about this thing called the Queensland Commitment, which will be formally launched later this month on the 24th of August. And we're hoping alongside our premiere if all things goes well. What we're really looking to do is really two things. We want to make sure that we're disrupting educational disadvantage in a meaningful way. Queensland has a way to go in terms of dropping some of the barriers that exist, both early on in people's lives to when they're on their high school time, making their big decision on where to come. We need to disrupt some of the disadvantage that exists in that pathway, particularly around low SES, regional remote, and an area that our friend Anita knows very well in the Indigenous engagement space. We've made huge strides as a state over the years. HEX and HELP have made a huge dent in that, but we've got a long way to go. So one of the things that we really want to do is fundamentally make sure that the university is positioning itself as an educational equity leader to the best of our ability over the next 10 years. So that when people are shining a light on Brisbane in 2032, when the Olympics are here and you're all here and we're all having a big party, I hope, that we'll also be toasting to all those amazing students that have an opportunity to pursue their educational pursuits in a way that perhaps they would not have been able to this year or certainly years prior. There's a huge educational equity opportunity that we'll be pursuing. We want to make sure that no matter your personal, financial, or geographic barriers, that you have the path to study at UQ by 2032. So you'll be hearing those words quite a bit. But we know we can't come and do those things alone. We need to do those with our communities. So we're going to be working really hard. And Michaeli's going to be playing a big role with our colleagues across the entire university to try to get out in our community here in Queensland more and make sure that we're building things together with communities here in Queensland, because we were ultimately created for and by the people of Queensland. We want to make sure that we're serving that population well into the future and trying to address problems together, which frankly the university already does. We want to shine a light on those and we want to build upon those opportunities. So we're really excited about kicking this off in earnest and getting the word out there, but we wanted to give you just a little taste of what's to come. So if you have ideas on that front, you know where to find me as well. Now, I could go on and on, but I'll try very hard not to, and instead hand it over to my colleague, Michaeli, who's going to share a few words before we get started with the panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jennifer, for highlighting those priorities moving forward. As you've just mentioned, we're going to hear now from UQ's Chief Community Engagement Officer, Michaeli Costello.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks, Jen. And so lovely to see you all. I think I've seen many of your faces in the sessions over the last couple of days. I really enjoyed the Global Cafe yesterday. It was a bit of fun, but it was also really good to get robust feedback from you. So thank you again for being so generous with your time and also your thoughtfulness in helping us do the best job that we possibly can do. And one of the key pieces of feedback that's come out over the last couple of days and was really reinforced in our ChangeMakers board meeting this morning is, what is ChangeMakers and how do all these new initiatives fit together? And it was actually a nice moment to sort of reflect on what we've been trying to build and where we're heading moving forward. And when we initially, started to, I guess, flip the way that we were doing alumni engagement on its head here at UQ, we traditionally across as a university wide, Bell had driven or built a really great ambassadorial led approach to alumni engagement, but it wasn't something that we'd scaled right across the university. So we recruited our global ChangeMakers board, and we made this commitment that all of our programming would be built by alumni for alumni. And so over the last couple of years, we've developed sort of micro groups where they help us shape that programming. So we have a young alumni board, we have the ChangeMakers board with that really global perspective. We have alumni friends who help us understand what those moving into that retirement volunteering space. And then we have all these specialist groups, 50 different groups actually right across the world. And we make sure that everything that we do has integrated their voices, whether or not that's coming up with the concept, testing the concept, or giving us feedback on how we can improve it. And it's been sort of really reassuring to see that over the last 2 years, our alumni engagement's grown by 25% just by listening, would you believe? And what we've really tried to create is a model that would allow alumni to engage with us in a way that was meaningful for them, but also added value to the university. And so we knew where we had some commonality was around sharing jobs, opening doors to industry, mentoring future students, building community. And so that was the premise of us initially launching the concept. And obviously COVID got in the way, but it also allowed us to deliver all of these virtual programs. But this next iteration that you've seen over the last couple of weeks is one step deeper. So we always knew that our most powerful export, and our vice chancellors say it all the time, is our alumni. They're our greatest asset. And what we really know is you're also each other's greatest asset. So we wanted to sort of cut out the middleman, which is us, and give you places and spaces to connect and engage directly with each other to do all of those things, job opportunities, network, engage. And so that's how the atrium space came to life. And that's particularly in listening to our younger alumni. So now our alumni base accounts for 44% of which are young alumni. And we know that the way that they work has changed. We know many of them are doing ventures and startups. It was nice to read your comment there, Tim, about some of the things that you've learned. So that space there was specifically for those people here in Queensland. But at the same time, we wanted to create a virtual world where you could do that from no matter where you are in the world. And I guess that's a nod to many of you here. None of you really are from Brisbane. I know we've got Charlotte for the next couple of days. And so those two things are very much interlinked. But now what's really exciting about the Queensland commitment is, we built this platform for you to connect and engage with each other. But now there's a real reason to unite under this shared mission. And that's to give this gift of a UQ education, which we've all been lucky enough to have, back to future Queenslanders. And so we hope through this momentum that we're building and this community that we're building, that with volunteers like you, we'll be able to ignite that passion amongst more alumni. And really share that message that giving back is not just giving financially, it's giving you time to have a conversation. It's opening the door to a job opportunity. It's, giving a motivational speech, all those things that you naturally do, but really clearly articulating that to our alumni community, that while you're helping one another to strengthen your careers and leverage your network and stay connected with us, that there's also these really meaningful ways to pay it forward to future generations. And, while that 25%'s been really encouraging, and this year we're on track to engage with 1 in 6, we know this is the beginning of a lifetime relationship with each and every one of you. And that's what we want every single alum to feel, that they have a lifetime relationship with the university. So I really just wanted to thank you for your leadership in showcasing the power of volunteerism, and just the difference that your thoughtfulness and your encouragement and also your ideas has made in us building this community. And without that community, we wouldn't be in the position to really drive these big initiatives forward, like the Queensland Commitment, which I share Jen's enthusiasm for such an exciting thing for Queensland. And for the world, and to be part of that, that's wonderful. So I really just wanted to reiterate my thanks. It's such a pleasure to work alongside you, and Emma and Izzy and Lauren, speak so highly of all of the work that you do. And I know that requires you jumping onto calls outside hours, in airports, hiding in offices. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Michaela, for joining us tonight and for your added enthusiasm as well. I'd also like to encourage everybody to keep spreading the word about the new platform. We will keep uploading across the coming days some of the highlights, the recordings and photos available from the symposium. Now, though, we're going to move on to our panel discussion this evening, Building Leadership Through Volunteering. Our panellists tonight are Andrew Cameron, OAM, Makara Ramsey and Lawrence Au. Andrew is a humanitarian aid worker and a highly decorated nurse who has worked across some of the world's most volatile modern conflicts and crises. He holds a Master's of Tropical Health from UQ and was awarded a 2017 Vice Chancellor's Alumni Excellence Award. Makara is the founder of Mix Chai, a social enterprise that funds suicide prevention through sales of chai tea. Makara also founded, she's also founded Ethnic LGBT+, a national resource platform for culturally and linguistically diverse LGBTIQA+ communities. She also holds a Bachelor of Laws in Honours and a Bachelor of Economics Honours from UQ, and was a 2021 UQ Distinguished Young Alumni Award recipient. Lawrence has worked at the forefront of Asia's financial industry for more than 35 years. He is a recognised thought leader and has been an active mentor of young professionals and business startups across his career. Lawrence holds a Master of Business Administration from UQ and was awarded a Vice Chancellor's Alumni Excellence Award in 2020. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm feeling very inadequate reading out those bios. We are very lucky to have you in our volunteer team. Welcome, everybody. To kick off tonight, we have our first question from Chelsea. And this is for the entire panel. What is your biggest reward from volunteering? Who'd like to volunteer to answer first? Makara is laughing there.
I'm happy to. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And just before I start, I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I am joining from today, the Ngunnawal people from just outside of Canberra, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. What a great question, Chelsea. And I really love the way you phrased that, because when I was unpacking what volunteering meant to me, I was just thinking how wonderful to have a non-transactional relationship in terms of monetary compensation, which is how we tend to value a lot of our relationships and our time in this world. What self-interest can I get out of it? And I think I was really inspired by some of the works around altruism, but to me, I can't even quantify what has been the biggest reward from volunteering. And if I try to put a name on it, I'd say it's made me into a person that I can really admire and love myself. From giving to others, I learned so much about myself and have been shaped so much through my volunteering experiences that I dread to think the kind of person I turned out to be if I hadn't engaged in that world of transactions, not for the sake of monetary compensation or recognition, but just for connection with other human beings. And that to me is volunteering.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Makara. A reminder of the personal growth that we get through the process of volunteering. Andrew, would you like to answer that question? What's your biggest reward from volunteering?
I think it's probably realising how fortunate I am to have been born into this world I've grown up in Australia and New Zealand. And when you go to places where people are struggling, such as in Yemen or Afghanistan or South Sudan, you realize just how lucky you are, and the least little thing you can do is helping. Helping people. It's very well accepted, and people are so grateful. Not that you want to have thanks or anything, but yeah, it just makes you realize how fortunate you are, and you've got a great education in your secondary school and your university, and people don't have this. So it's just wonderful to be able to share and give back, I think.
And Andrew, even in our own backyard, when you think of places like Wilcannia in Western New South Wales, which has the lowest life expectancy in the world, and that's in Australia. So even looking inwards, there's so many opportunities to be involved in community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew, for reminding us all the sense of privilege that we have. If we're logged on here, here's UQ alumni, we're all in positions of privilege. So thank you for that. And Lawrence.
Yes, I do agree with the other two panelists. I mean, to do volunteering, you recognize sometimes how lucky you are. Although I came from a very humble family background, and I benefited from a lot of the help from the society, giving me the opportunity to get education, through scholarships and all that. And then when I start working, I was fortunate enough to get a couple of people who are very kind to show me the way and taught me a lot of things in my job. Not necessarily, out of any particular reason. And I feel that, when it comes to myself, when I have the opportunity, I would like to do that as well. And I think the biggest reward you get out of volunteering is, you actually get a lot of satisfaction and joy out of that, because, you're exposed to a lot of different situations, very different from yours. And like Tara said, you learn a lot about yourself as well, because you're facing these kind of situation you're not unfamiliar with. And you hear from all these people that the issues, not necessarily bad issues sometimes, like students wondering what they are going to do, what should they study, and blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, to train yourself to have a pair of listening ears, put yourself on their shoes and try to help them to draw out their own strength and help them to come up with some kind of decision that they will live with and they own and work on it. I think that gives you a lot of satisfaction, and especially when you see some of them actually become rather successful, a couple of years later. I think that to me is a very wonderful thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Lawrence. I think I thought of T-shirt slogans while you were speaking. I thought volunteering is a perfect way to pay it forward. Pay it forward is a great way to volunteering is a great way to pay it forward, because as you were saying, people looked out for you and mentored you, and then you did that for others. So thank you. Our next question is from Emma. The question is, where has volunteering led you? For example, have you found greater connections in your sector or elsewhere, or have you found opportunities through volunteering? We might start with you, Andrew.
Volunteering has led me to some very, very interesting places. And in, say, for example, in the worst prisons in Afghanistan, you might think it's terrible, but it's actually a great privilege to go there and to spend time with the detainees and to help them in some small little way. It gives you a great sense of satisfaction, and you realise that it's not all doom and gloom. You can do a lot to help those people's miserable lives to become a little bit more cheerful, a little bit more hope for the future, even if they've you know, they've got a 10-year sentence. You can do a lot to make that time a bit more enjoyable. For example, I was in a youth prison in Uruzgan one time, and it was a very sad situation. And there were just 10 to 12-year-old boys in there who had anyway, I won't tell you what they were there for, but they had virtually nothing to do, so they were bored out of their brains. And I had a good idea. I asked them, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to make our own clothes. So I bought them through our work. I bought them a dozen sewing machines, just hand winding ones, and some bolts of fabric and some cotton. And they were so happy the next time I came with these sewing machines. And it's little memories like that I hope they still have them, and at least they're not just twiddling their thumbs all day. And that's just one example of giving. I think it still resonates with me.
Thank you for sharing that very practical. I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing a very practical opportunity. I mean, you're telling us stories that many of us would never otherwise hear in this space. So thank you. Makara, where has volunteering led you?
Yeah, I think particularly aligned with my own passions of just loving being outdoors and immersing in nature. And actually through university whilst at UQ, because I think it took me 7 years to finish my double law economics degree, and I half joked with my parents that I think I'll start a med degree after this. So I was at uni for a long time, and through that time, I think having grown up firstly in South Africa and then moved to Australia in high school, a group of us who were avid hikers were becoming increasingly aware of access to national landmarks and access to nature, and how often, because of increased tourism, locals were finding it inaccessible to access. So we actually got a group together, and it grew to about 100 of us, and we each sponsored like a student at the School of St. Jude's in Tanzania, started by an Australian woman to help the poorest of the poor. And we sponsored 100 of them to climb Kilimanjaro with us. And I'll never forget the moment standing on top of Kilimanjaro next to my friend, or Rafiki in Swahili, Tim. And, you know, we're just standing up there mesmerized that we made it, but just Tim weeping because he's getting to stand on the top of the tallest mountain in his country and look out and see the lands. And to me, that was incredible. And it's an experience we then repeated again and did the same sort of process and went to the base camp of Everest. And I just can't believe that volunteering took me through these incredible landmarks, and to share them with the people who live, breathe, die on those lands. To me, that made it so much more meaningful. So volunteering definitely can take you places.
Yeah, that's a great pitch for volunteering. And Lawrence.
Well, I didn't have any of those, experience. I really envy you guys. But obviously, I mentor quite a lot of young professionals, young people. And I really enjoy that because, as young people, you have big dreams, you have a lot of energy, and you talk with them, you help them, you support them, and help them hopefully make less mistakes in the way how they want to pursue these dreams, and maybe shortcut a little bit with my experience. And I think, I really enjoy that because the amount of energy you get out of them, to be honest, make me feel very young, despite my age. And I think that is really great. There was one group of a little startup that I actually helped, and they were Indian students actually, study in Japan, and they want to go back and revive the Kashmir industry in India. Kashmir, as you know, the garment that you wear. And I learned so much from them. And, the way how Kashmir was hand weave and all that. But sadly, all those skills were lost. And so because they grew up there and they had the opportunity to move abroad, study abroad, they want to go back and set up a little startup to help them to revive the industry, cutting through all the intermediaries, maybe using a technology platform and to sell them those cashmere. For a little while, they have been just launching the business and all that, get the first payment. Then unfortunately, then the clash between India and Pakistan means that the whole area was concealed. They were shut off from the rest of the world. So I felt very sad about that, and I lost contact with them. But on the other hand, I hope, their energy will be there, and then in future, given the opportunity, they will still pursue other dreams and help their community. I think, in a way, when you help somebody, they actually help somebody else as well. So that you are building that leadership through that chain.
Thank you for flagging the building capacity for the younger people, but there was many messages in your response there. The one I'm taking away is that volunteering keeps you young. I really like that one. We have to suck the youth out of our young people that we mentor. We have a question now from Ranger. How do you find time between busy work and family commitments to volunteer? Who would like to go first? Lawrence. I'm volunteering you.
Sure. I mean, I had very busy schedule when during my career because I was a regional CEO for business of the bank. I find volunteering a good way of positively distracting you from your daily work because you're thinking something totally different. And that's a great way of relaxing your mind. So in a way, it doesn't add to your mental burden, but helps you to relax yourself. So that's why you would be able to find time. And then, of course, the other thing being a volunteer is that you have to like what you want to do with the volunteering. Not just sign up for anything just because you want to volunteer. It has to be something that you feel passionate about. And then the other thing is you also need to say no. Knowing that sometimes you have already committed too much, and it's time to say no and just focus on what you do. And if you do all that, I think you will always find time for volunteering.
Some great messages there, and especially I think to be able to say no without guilt.
I really loved your point too around it's not just sort of a tick box exercise of I should volunteer and it'll feel good. It kind of flows naturally from passions, and you'll find you'll be putting more time towards something you're passionate about. And I think that's what helped me conceptualize the conundrum of finite time and finite resources. And I think I sort of had an epiphany upon, you come from a great place of learning that is UQ, and you have access and engage with so many ideas and debate. And I kind of entered the corporate world straight away as a young, excited economist at Deloitte Access Economics in Sydney. And I must admit, I think I only lasted a year there because I started to realize how trapped I was becoming in a system of time being tied to non-meaningful work at the time for me. And I think what helped me at that age was to step back and conceptualize my life as these cycles of patterns, which human beings seem to love. We're creatures of habit. And instead of compartmentalizing sort of, work, family, life, it became around meaning and lifestyle. And I think that's where volunteering became part of the core experience of what am I putting my time towards and what meaning is being derived. And I think naturally that's why social enterprise was so appealing. It was sort of a way to sustainably follow one's passions for impact and meaningfulness whilst being able to still pay rent and buy groceries and so forth. But I really liked your point there, Lawrence. I feel like try not to force it. And also it's easier to say no when you realize I should do something that's meaningful to me, and use that as your guiding principle to put your time to what's meaningful for you at the end of the day.
Thank you. So much there. Andrew, I'm just wondering, while we're listening to Lawrence and Makara, a lot of your volunteering is abroad. That would impact, obviously, time with family. How do you find the time to balance the commitments and so forth with your volunteering?
Well, probably the main thing is you need an understanding partner. And I'm just fortunate, I think my wife is very understanding. She knows that I feel very happy when I'm doing the work I love, and I'm also very happy to come back home again. So my family just realised my two daughters are very understanding as well, and are both young women now with getting on with their own careers. One's an engineer, one's in the med school, and I think that's all they've known of me really, is that that's the work I do, and I come home and we have lots of fun and do things, and yeah, I think, yeah, that's how I think.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thank you. So I've got a whole range of responses, which is wonderful for people thinking about how they may need to balance their own volunteering work with other commitments. We have a question now from Sophie, and Sophie asks, can you grow leadership from volunteering? Who would like to take that first? Makara.
Well, I'll start. I'll
Okay.
say, I think you can grow leadership from volunteering, because it gives you an opportunity to build a team, which is very important. Get people, your compatriots or the people who you're employing and so on, to all work on the same theme, and you give them opportunity to voice their opinion, especially when you're in a foreign country. You, of course, don't know the local milieu, how things work, and if you have to be open to advice and guidance from resident staff in those countries. It also gives you an opportunity to show by example of some of the things you've learnt, and actually this whole business is it's kind of mutually enriching. So you feel good that you did a great job, and people feel who are your beneficiaries are equally grateful. So that's just a few points about how leadership can evolve from volunteering.
Wonderful. Thank you. Makara.
Yes, it's a great question. And I think circling back to my first response, my biggest take from volunteering has been the self-reflection it forces. And I recall one moment in particular where my sister and I were really keen to go to India for the first time, and we saw an opportunity to volunteer at Mother Teresa's home in, the name just popped out in my head.
Calcutta.
I awesome if you've been there too, Andrew. And we were volunteering at the home for abandoned children, or children where parents just couldn't look after them anymore because of an illness or a physical handicap. And I think, we were 21 and 19 at the time, and it was such a formative experience for me, being in that environment, and having to see the realities of volunteering, the fact that the small children didn't want to eat but needed nutrition, the fact that volunteers at times had to be quite forceful with the child, and it really challenged what volunteering could look like, and when you had to really take action on behalf of someone who's so dependent on you. And that sort of introspection I had to do at the time, and the confrontation, I feel has furthered the qualities that I admire in leadership, which is empathy, introspection, being able to step back and provide perspective, creating safe environments. And those are the skills I feel most heightened from volunteering, because it forces you to introspect and realize where are your lines and what are your attributes. And the stronger you know yourself, the better leader you can be.
Beautiful. Thank you. Lawrence, looking for you on the screen. There you are.
Yeah. Definitely. I think, you know, I mean, obviously, when we talk about leadership, there are very wide spectrum of what it means and all that. Now, to me, you know, relating it back to mentoring, I think it helps me to a lot in training my own leadership skills in terms of listening to people. You know, when you're a CEO, you tend to think you know everything. You tell people what you want, what they should be doing. But in that situation, you know, that's the last thing you want to do. You want to listen, you know, even though he is an 18-year-old, 20 years old, or whatever, you know, listen, empathize, try to understand his situation. And then on the other hand, obviously, you apply a little bit of your experience and, you know, a little bit of wisdom that you gather over the years to talk through the issues that the person has. But at the end of the day, the person has to come up with their own answers, how to address the issues. And I think that's the greatest, you know, leadership skills that I've learned. Because in an organization, you don't know everything, even though you're the leader. You know, all the people around you, they are actually exposed to the actual situation. And if you apply all the skills that I described just now, actually come up with the best you know, strategy and solutions in tackling a business issue. Not necessarily just because you tell them this is the way to do. And the most important thing is that they own the solutions they come up with, and they are absolutely dedicated to you. And that's what a leader needs when you want to get something done, you know, rather than you tell them what to do, not something they want to do. I think that's one aspect of the leadership skills that I find very valuable, you know, through this experience.
Thank you. A reminder that we're all lifelong learners, including leaders. I think we may be taking some questions. Is that correct, Lauren? Yes, who's monitoring that? Oh, we are now opening the floor, open mic for question time to the panel. Are there any questions you'd like to unmute yourself, put your hand up, ask your question? Anybody?
I mean, I want to ask Anita a question.
No, I'm not taking questions, but thanks anyway. I'm not taking questions. Unless it's an easy one.
Oh, no, I mean, it's so incredible, the breadth of literature you've put out. And I was wondering how volunteering might have informed your writing process.
Well, that's a very good question. So I am a lifetime ambassador for the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, which is obviously a volunteer role. And I volunteer, and I sit on a number of not-for-profit boards, the National Justice Project, which is works for advocacy in the criminal justice system and the health system. So, you know, I've worked in remote communities as a role model for the National Aboriginal Sporting Chants Academy, which is also volunteer capacity. And from that, I see the joy, a couple of things, the joy that storytelling brings to people, but also I've seen the disadvantage that young Indigenous people, Indigenous communities generally have in remote communities, and which is why I volunteer in the literacy space. So it's just made me value even more, I guess, my education, because I know all of us here this evening are here because we've had access to all the resources, all the literature that we've needed to get through school and to get to university. So when you and Andrew spoke about this before in terms of recognising that we all exist in a position of privilege, that is a real driving force for us to volunteer in whatever sector is relevant or important or we're passionate about, which you've all talked about. And I guess for me, working in those communities, I also see groups of people who are without a voice in the national literary landscape. So I write stories to write First Nations people, particularly Wiradjuri people, into the national literary landscape. Thank you. Next question for someone else. I think Michaela and Jennifer will take questions too if you've got any questions for the powers that be.
I've got a question.
Okay, we have a question from Lauren.
I'll try this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, great. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. My question is for the panelists in terms of, when you do volunteer, doing things that are close to your heart. How do you sort of manage that in terms of full-time work? Do you have a commitment like no more than 4 or 5 hours a month? Like volunteering is absolutely amazing, but also taking back to that balance issue, and it doesn't pay the bills at the end of the day. But sort of how do you have any guidelines around managing your time that way?
Well, I think maybe I start with that. Especially when you first started volunteering, apart from what I said that before, go for something you're passionate about. Start small. Don't try to go for something really too big for yourself to handle. You have to build. Yet there's a process. You start doing something small, get satisfaction out of it. It also is a way of testing yourself. Whether you have enough time, whether you can manage your time, the way that you want. And then as you get more good at it, then you do something big. And I think that's a process as well. So we all started somewhere. You need to start it somewhere. And once you start it, I tell you, if you find the right thing that you're passionate about, you will never want to stop.
And I think I liked what Lauren said about saying no. And for me, and I like those sentiments around it's hard to give when your own cup isn't full, and you'll also know when your giving is not as genuine as it should be. And to me, that's always a clear flag. It's actually time to stop, time to look after self, so then I can give better. And of course, that's if you're in positions to do that. But yeah, I think it does become addictive, and then there is the realities. And so I do try to put sustainable streams behind volunteering. Again, I think that's why social enterprise is so meaningful.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it's really important to look after yourself as well, because it's like you say, if you don't say no, then you might end up bleeding yourself dry, and you're no good to anyone then. So really look after yourself and keep your mind and body fit, and lifelong learning. And yeah, then you're good to help others.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're going to make that the final question for tonight, which brings our very first Global Alumni Volunteer Symposium officially to a wrap. Before we say goodbye, we have a brief video to share with you with music led by Simon Hewitt, a member of the ChangeMakers board and music director of the Queensland Youth Orchestra. Hope you enjoy it. I know you'll enjoy this. I've seen it.
Wow.
Around the world. Thank you for continuing to connect with UQ.
Thank you for being a host for Global Connection.
Thank you for building and strengthening UQ's shared purpose.
Thank you for increasing UQ's global connectivity.
Thank you to our UQ Global Alumni volunteer community.
Thank you for being a changemaker.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Oh, wow, how fantastic was that? I feel like giving a standing ovation. Turn your mics on. I'll do a round of applause. Thank you again, everyone, for coming tonight. I hope you've had a wonderful time. I know I have, and the people in the room here have. I hope you've met some great people over the course of the week and learned something new. For those of you based in Brisbane, we would love it if you joined us on Sunday for Back to UQ, including celebratory drinks at St. Lucia's Patina in the afternoon. We've started. This is just water. I said I wanted to have water in a wine glass to celebrate with you tonight. For our global friends, we're also kicking off celebratory drinks as part of Global Connection in 20 cities around the world from today until Saturday. So you can join us in Santiago, Singapore, London, Delhi, and Beijing, just to name a few. I'd encourage you to check out the events pages on the UQ ChangeMakers portal and register to attend one if you can, that's near you. A huge thank you to everyone who's been involved over the past 3 days and for all your incredible work as our alumni volunteers. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings or your mornings or your middays, wherever you are in the world. Ta-da. Bye.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Safe, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
For the older people, good night, Jim Bob, Sue Ellen, Mary Ellen, it's the Waltons. All right.
Bye, everyone.